Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the A-Side. I am your host, Riley, and a lot has come out over the past week, 2 weeks or so. We have that new Kendrick album that everyone is talking about. We have The Smile, the offshoot of Radiohead, which is out. And I'm not going to be talking about any of it, because I'm going to be talking about Hyperpop. And if you don't know what Hyperpop is, that means you're either old or don't spend as much time on the internet as I do. It's a very much up-and-coming genre that really started to break through in the mainstream. Not in the mainstream, but really started to break through in popularity around 2019 with the band 100 gecs and their album 1000 gecs. And, very much that style of hyperpop is very like goblin gremlin music. It's very over the top and big. But I've found it's kind of evolved over time. It's gotten to other circles of the internet. You have people making more emotionally charged hyperpop, more melancholy, more, I don't want to say musically conventional, maybe conventional structure-wise, but it's a very loud, strange sounding genre. And I actually ended up coming upon an artist I found I really loved. I was listening to a Blade album, and when that album was done, Spotify started just cycling through tracks that it would think I would like, and it showed me a song called Glitter by a guy named Aldn, and it blew me away. It's been about a year since I found that song, and it's quickly become one of my favorite songs of all time, actually. And I've been actually a fan of Aldn ever since. And he just put out a new EP entitled Good Grief. So I'm going to be reacting to Good Grief. But before we get started, if you're new around here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's free, and you can always unsubscribe if you want. I actually think this video might be coming out on the 2nd anniversary of the A-Side. So if you want to hit that subscribe, it's been 2 years, and we're still going strong. And hey, leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It really helps get things in the algorithm. Now, we're getting into the first track here, Denial. And I did hear a little bit of this first track here. And I have to say, the sounds I heard were very interesting. So just get right into it. It's got, like, these guitars. And it's, like, very pop-punkified hyperpop. And I really like it. The really, like, processed, like, tinny vocals are very hyperpop. But then it's got this, like, pop-punk guitar and power chords that I think is really cool. It's almost like if MGK grew up on Tumblr all the time. I think it's really a neat sound for hyperpop. It's also still very recognizably Aldn in places, though. Especially the sounds like Aldn. And I like the guitars here being paired with the, like, bubbly sounding synths is kind of cool. Just sounds so good, dude. Because I love pop punk, one of my all-time favorite genres, and hyperpop really has become one of my favorite genres in the last couple of years, and, well, in the last year, pretty much. And I think the fusing of the two genres is a really interesting idea. But I'm curious if the rest of the EP is going to have this vibe. Just a super fresh take on both pop punk and hyperpop. That's the best way I can describe the song. It's very fresh sounding. I can't think of much else that really sounds like this. I mean, there's some hyperpop that definitely has a rock influence, guitars and stuff on it. I mean, you can look at like Glave's I Want to Slam My Head Against the Wall, has a lot of guitar on it, but nothing like this being so guitar driven, yet it's still very much outside of the realm of pop punk. There's no pop punk that has quite this flair to it. So it's a very fresh sound, and I really appreciate that Aldn is really doing something new here. I think kind of pushing the mold of what both genres can be. I'm going to give that track Denial the green. If you're new around here and you don't know how the rating system works, well, if you are new around here and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? But if you don't know how the rating system works, if I think a song is just kind of meh, I'll give it the black GameCube controller. If I think it's good, I will give it the green folder. And if I think it's bad, it will get the red folder. Denial gets the green folder. I really loved that song. Like I said, I think I made myself clear about, let me be clear. I disappear. I don't know how to do that with editing, but anyway, that sound was really cool. Track 2, Swim. It's interesting opening, very like dreamy, very sleepy. This has a very, like, sleepy vibe to it. I don't want to say dreamy, but very sleepy, like you're waking up in the morning. Really cool. Maybe dreamy. With the ooh, it's kind of shoegazy. Oh, the drumming is really cool. Ah, they're hitting those guitars hard. Wow, this is like pop punk lyricism so much, and like a pop punk sound and vibe. But then once again, the vocals here are like super overblown and produced like a hyperpop song. It's just such a cool take on both sounds. But that chorus was really awesome, where the guitars just came blaring through, super like pop punk. Like, this just oozes angst and like 2000s. I really appreciate the drumming too. That theremin, I don't know if it is a theremin or something that sounds like a theremin, is a neat touch. That chorus is just so angsty and cool when those guitars come in. It just sounds like it was right straight out of 2000. I can't help but just swim. Tell me what you're so special. That's right up my alley. I feel like there's a lot going on in these songs too. Kind of once again very reminiscent of hyperpop. It's like hyperpopified. It's hyperpop punk. And that's really cool, because just like hyperpop, there's a lot going on with really loud, like overproduced drum, not overproduced, but overblown drums, and lots of synths and auto-tune, all these noises. And I feel like this song is kind of the same, except instead of it being like pop and synthetic instruments, it's like real instruments. You've got drums and a theremin and some synths, and then the guitar, and then the vocal effects here, almost sounding maybe a little strokesy with the kind of tinniness to it. So it kind of makes that big cacophonous explosive sound of hyperpop, but with pop punk instrumentals and pop punk lyrics and pop punk vibe, which is really interesting. And like I said, I don't think I've ever really heard anything like this before. So I'm also going to give Swim the green folder. I am loving this so far. It's only 7 tracks too, so it's going to be just a breeze. None of these, this was the only track actually that even went past 2 minutes. So next, Swim and sync being back to back is kind of witty. Let's go to sync, next track. Oh, so the way that guitar is like so like deep fried in like production and in the filters, it sounds almost unlike a guitar, but the way the guitar and the voice and the drums are all lining up on pitch and on beat, da-da, 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 the way they're all completely synced up together is really neat. It's so cool because it creates like this really like buzzy effect on the vocals and this really like buzzy sound to everything. Really awesome. Ooh. There are some watery synths there for the sync. Very, very watery sounding. Oh, those synths! Oh my god, that's such a cool touch. I'm a sucker for really good synth sound, and this is a good one. That sounds incredible. I love this part, this chorus here, where these watery synths are doing their thing, the do, 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 on top of what Aldn is doing. I just can't sync, and the guitars are kind of interesting. I don't know. I like how they're kind of on different spectrums, whereas the synth is pretty watery. The music, the rest of it, is this like really staticky sound. So it's an interesting dynamic between the two sounds. And I really like the vibe of his vocals here. I don't know how to describe it. Let me... Especially the do, 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 do on the guitars there have this like sad sound to them, and I really appreciate that kind of stuff. Yeah, ooh. The synth line here is very hyperpop, very cloud rap. Just can't sing. I just can't sing. I just can't sing. Bum 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 bum. This song has such like a nice driving beat behind it too. Bum 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 bum. It's very easy to just get into and get lost in and just jam along with because of how just consistently it's marching along. Wow, this EP, man, is doing stuff for me. Sync gets a green. I just think a lot of the musical elements of that song were cool. I loved how it just kept marching on. I loved the way the watery synths kind of contrasted with the very buzzy, staticky sounding vocals and guitars, how they lined up together, and the synths were kind of doing their own thing. Very much felt like an imbalance, but in a good kind of way. Very interesting. Next song is called Bargaining with Versace, spelled with a Z, I think. Ooh. this has a very indie rock sound to it. Like one of those indie crossover hits from like the early to mid 2010s, like Everybody Talks. It's like it has like a very Neon Tree sound to it with the vocal melody. Do 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 do. Except the drums are so loud, and everything is kind of distorted around it. The way more guitar sounds and guitar parts keep, like, cascading in. That's interesting. It's got this pretty, like, mainstream indie appeal in the vocal melody, but then the production is slowly getting, like, more distorted and more loud as the voice becomes more distorted and run through more filters as more guitar sounds start to come in. Like, right before the chorus here, there was, like, a cacophonous sound of guitars, which was really interesting. Oh. I love that guitar part. Ooh. The back and forth in the vocal there was so cool. Helpless, 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 helpless. Just a really neat back and forth. Once again, I really enjoy that stuff. These lies keep adding up, heading back on that he's adding up. It's so bad, can't tell what he's tripping off. 2 shots of 2 cows. Ooh, that bass is really cool too. Ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Oh, that synth. Wow, that synth sound is really awesome. It sounds so, like, outer spacey, and the way it's, like, mixed out kind of to sound far away, too, is really interesting, and how it just kind of comes out of nowhere with a boo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Just really feels like it wraps everything together, and it being near the end of the song really feels like it's like a, hey, you made it to the end. Just a really neat way to kind of wrap up the track. Wow, that was really interesting. Once again, I think I made it clear why I like that song throughout the track. But I think my favorite part especially was the back and forth vocals on the chorus there. The helpless, helpless. I thought was really neat. So that song gets a green. I am loving this EP so far. Maybe the most fun I've had with music this year. Because music this year, a lot of my favorite records definitely haven't been fun in any way possible. I mean, Ants from Up Here is amazing, but it's not fun. Glitch Princess sounds amazing. That is not a fun album. The new Kendrick album is really cool. That is definitely not a fun album. That album is heavy. But this is one of the first albums I've heard this year so far that has been both very quality and just a lot of fun to listen to. I'm having a blast listening to it. So let's go to the next track. Ignorance is Bliss. That is harsh. That bass line is very much Tame Impala. It sounds like a great value, the less I know the better. What's called Ignorance is Bliss. Is this just a Tame Impala ripoff? Because immediately from that opening bass line, it sounds like boo doo doo boo doo doo boo boo from the same kind of like I don't want to say messy, the same kind of buzzy production of those synths here, of those bass there. I'm sorry, immediately starting off the song like that, like very danceable, and the song being called "Ignorance is Bliss" instead of "The Less I Know, the Better." Either it is very much intentional, like wink wink, or Aldn's just straight up ripping off Kevin Parker. Come on. As the song goes on, though, man, those like that heavy, fuzzy bass is just going right through my skull. I love the sound of that. It's just awesome. The fuzzier, the better. Oh, those bleep bloops are really interesting. Really cool vocal melodies. I can see that being really catchy. Oh. The bleep bloops here sound very like 8-bit, like very NES, very like Game Boy. Really neat. Yeah, that sounds very, very 8-bit era. I love that kind of stuff. You saw my reaction to Love is Dead. You know I love that kind of sound. Okay, the vocal melodies remind me of Gorillaz. That's where I'm getting a very similar vibe. Doesn't that sound something like Gorillaz would do? Ignorance is bliss. Really, really cool though, and I can see this song in the future being lodged in my head all the time. It's already so catchy sounding. Oh. This has like almost like the sound of like rolling up to a fight almost. It's like definitely like entrance music. Like in a movie, a bunch of people like rolling up to go to a fight and getting ready. That's the sound I get. Rolling up into this song, I really thought I was going to get a Tame Impala ripoff, but the further I went into it, the more that fuzzy bass just made its way through my skull, and the chorus got lodged in my head, and those 8-bit synthesizers really made their way into my nostalgia, and this song just shaped up to be an amazing listen. So Ignorance is Bliss is also going to get the green folder from me. The next track is Do or Die, featuring Carol's Daughter, who I feel like I've heard of before, but I'm not quite sure, so I'm not gonna mess with that now. So let's just listen to it. Okay, immediately it's got some really interesting synths, almost reminding me of like the middle section of the 1975's I Like It When You Sleep. Not quite hyperpop electronics, which is interesting. Very shimmery though. Immediately, I love Aldn's delivery of the vocals here. They're so like slurred and muffled, and they sound so dejected and sad, like he's just hanging his head and kind of talking like this, like, oh, you know, I'm okay. It's fine. Just a really cool way of getting that emotion across through his vocal performance alone. Really, really good stuff. Interesting. I think the song is the most conventional. I don't want to say it's hyperpop sounding because it's maybe a little too. No, this is definitely the most conventional hyperpop sounding song so far. Reminds me a lot of like Charlie XCX. It's cool, but it's not doing for me as much as the other tracks were. Some of the melodies sound maybe a little cheesy, especially because that last one brought me straight back to the new Weezer project. The look me in the eyes brought me to a little bit of love. And I thought that melody was cheesy and that song sounded cheesy. So the melodies here not working for me. It's mostly that inflection there at the end. Do 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 do. Just, I don't know, makes it sound super, super just cheesy and something I've heard a million times before. I think those bleep bloops are kind of cool. I really like when Carol's daughter gets on this track, actually. It's Aldn that's disappointed me on this song. Carol's daughter is doing a good job. Oh, I really like that vocal. I like that. I like the valley of space between those notes. Boop, 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 boop. I just like the jumping. It really, just kind of jolts you in a way I think is really interesting. So that was Do or Die, and I can confidently say that was easily my least favorite track on the album. I'm going to give that the black GameCube controller. There were elements I liked, especially like some of the bleep bloops were cool, and some of what Carol's daughter was doing was really interesting, but a lot of what Aldn was doing really wasn't pulling me in. I think the song itself is very much a little too slow for this EP. It really kind of broke the pace a little bit, with the rest of these songs being pretty angsty and not angry, but angsty is the right word, and very kind of pop punk and loud and kind of in your face and bigger. This song being a little more subdued and just kind of felt like a slog in the album, and I think a lot of what Aldn was doing, especially with the vocal melodies, just sounded so been there, done that. And I think I would skip that track pretty much any time listening to this EP. It really is a vibe killer, but hopefully this last track won't be. It's titled Acceptance. New friends, new drugs, new life. The bass there, the way it came in, the boom 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 boom, and at the very end, layered that with a bass note harmonizing with that note. So we have the two dueling bass lines harmonizing with each other, only for a split second there, but it was gorgeous. And once again, the cacophonous sound of guitars and synths, very much being hyper pop punk. Maybe not as much as the first couple of tracks, but definitely very in your face. It'll jolt you awake. And it's doing that classic quiet loud dynamic, which is really interesting, except it's taking the loud very much to a cacophonous extreme. I think that's really interesting. So it's pulling from bands like Nirvana, Weezer, the Pixies, in that influence, except really pushing it to something so strange that I feel like a lot of people who aren't familiar with this sound wouldn't really get. And I feel like I'll wait a minute before I get to my thoughts on the album, because it's gonna tie into that. But okay. Acceptance, while not being as strong as some of the tracks earlier on the record, I did really enjoy. I'm gonna give that the green. And with that, let's get into my final thoughts on this record, because I have them. I thought this album was great. I thought it was or EP, sorry, was great. It was so fresh and unique, the way it took both pop punk and hyperpop and kind of fused them together to push both sounds in this new direction. It was so fresh to listen to, and it was something so different from anything else I've heard. And I also think that might be its downfall for a lot of people. I just so happen to love pop punk and love hyperpop. Well, I think the hyperpop people will be much more accepting of this. I think a lot of pop punk people who aren't familiar with hyperpop maybe won't get it, and aren't going to be a big fan of it just because they don't know hyperpop. They might hear it and be like, this is so like loud and produced so weirdly. What are these vocal effects? What are these wild synths? Like, if they don't understand or have heard hyperpop before and they hear this as thinking it's going to be like a pop punk album, they're going to be like, what the fuck am I listening to? And I feel like that's probably a lot of people's first reaction when they hear hyperpop in the first place. Like when 1000 Gex came out kind of late 2019 into 2020, and people started talking about like Money Machine. A lot of people laughed at it. It was like, what the fuck is this? But then a bunch of people really embraced Money Machine and were like, this song is awesome, and I'm one of those people. But a lot of people thought it was like chipmunk internet people music, and I guess it kind of is internet people music, but in a good way. I feel like hyperpop really has given a sound and an identity to Gen Z in a way no other genre has. I feel like it's very much a strictly Gen Z genre. It's kind of like our grunge to like Gen X, and like our pop punk to like millennials. Our sound is going to be hyperpop. That's what came out of our generation, and people my age kind of started to embrace and cultivate, is this sound. And I really appreciate it, and I really love this EP. I had so much fun with it. I think the pop punk vibes are definitely a lot stronger in the second half, or in the first half, whereas there aren't as much there in the last couple of tracks, and it doesn't necessarily have as much hyperpop perfection in the second half to keep it afloat the same way the first half was, which is unfortunate because I think Aldn has made some of the best hyperpop songs ever. I mean, Glitter, Precious, What Was the Last Thing You Said, and so many more pretty amazing tracks, especially from Before the Greenhouse EP, Happy Ever After, I'm Alright, IFLS, Red Eyes. Like, a lot of his work has been amazing in the hyperpop genre, and probably he's my favorite of the people who have been making this sound. But I really enjoyed this EP. It's definitely the most fun I've had with the project this year. And it's kind of balanced the enjoyment and the experimentation and quality very well in a way that doesn't always happen. A lot of times experimental music isn't fun or enjoyable. It's enjoyable, but not in the same way as a lot of less experimental music. I feel like this album really rode that line. It's just really fresh to hear. Very refreshing sound. So yeah, I think I'm going to give that like a 8+ to a 9-. I loved that EP. I'll definitely be coming back to it a lot this year. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you're new around here, once again, hit that subscribe button. And just thank you so much, everyone, for 2 years, man. I guess this will be my 2-year anniversary. Yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.